I brought a gift for my grandson, and my daughter said, "Don't waste your money on that. He doesn't even know you." But when she opened the present and read the letter I included, she burst into tears. "Your presence here means so much to me. Watch until the end and leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far my story has reached. I brought a gift for my grandson, and my daughter said, 'Don't waste money on this. He doesn't even know you.'" When she opened the present, she burst into tears over the letter I included. My hands trembled as I stood on Catherine's doorstep, clutching the small gift bag. At 68, I'd learned to mask my nervousness well, but today was different. I was about to meet my grandson for the first time, 3 months after his birth. I'd dressed carefully in my best blouse and pressed slacks, even put on the pearl earrings I saved for special occasions. The drive across town had given me too much time to rehearse what I'd say, what I'd do if Catherine rejected me again. When she opened the door, my heart caught in my throat. Catherine looked tired, dark circles shadowing her eyes, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. But she was still beautiful, she always had been. "Mom," she said flatly. Not a question, not a welcome. Just an acknowledgement. "Hello, Catherine," I managed. "May I come in?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. The house was immaculate, exactly what I'd expect from my perfectionist daughter and her equally meticulous husband. Family photos lined the hallway, but I noticed with a pang that none included me. "James is at work," Catherine said, leading me to the living room. "The baby's sleeping." I nodded, clutching my gift bag tighter. "I won't stay long. I wanted to meet him. And to give him this." I extended the package, wrapped in soft blue paper with tiny silver stars. Catherine stared at it like I was offering her something dangerous. "Don't waste money on this," she said, her voice sharp as broken glass. "He doesn't even know you." The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd prepared myself for coldness, but the casual cruelty still stung. I swallowed hard, pushing back the tears threatening to spill. "Please," I whispered. "Just open it." Something in my voice must have reached her. She took the package reluctantly, fingers working mechanically to unwrap the paper. Inside was a small velvet box. When she opened it, I heard her breath catch. The antique silver locket gleamed against the dark velvet, my grandmother's locket, passed down through generations. Catherine had always admired it as a child, tracing the delicate engravings with her tiny fingers. Beside it lay a cream-colored envelope with her name written in my careful script. "Read it," I said softly. "Please." She hesitated, then slid her finger under the seal. As her eyes moved across the page, something changed in her expression. The carefully constructed wall began to crumble. Her hand flew to her mouth, and tears, the tears she'd been holding back for years, finally broke free. "Mom," she gasped between sobs. "I didn't know. I never knew." 26 years ago, my world had shattered when Alan walked out on us. Catherine was only 12, old enough to feel the abandonment but too young to understand its complexity. One day, her father was there, the next, he was gone, leaving behind nothing but a brief note and a mountain of debts I never knew existed. I still remember Catherine standing in the doorway of her bedroom the night I had to tell her we were moving from our comfortable suburban home to a tiny apartment. "But what about Daddy?" she'd asked, her voice small and confused. "He's not coming with us, sweetheart," I'd said, trying to keep my own voice steady. "He's gone." What followed were years of struggle that Catherine never fully witnessed but always felt. 3 jobs, receptionist during the day, waitressing evenings, and weekend retail work. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. The rare moments I had at home, I was exhausted, often falling asleep before I could help with homework or listen to Catherine's day. She grew more distant with each passing year. By high school, the bright, affectionate child I'd raised had transformed into a sullen teenager who viewed me as the enemy, the mother who was never there. "You're never home," she'd scream during our increasingly frequent arguments. "You don't care about me." How could I explain that every hour I worked was for her? That the lights stayed on and food appeared in our refrigerator because I sacrificed sleep, friendships, any semblance of a personal life, all so she could have what other kids had. Now, watching her tears fall onto my letter, I wondered if she finally understood. If the words I'd written had finally bridged the chasm between us. The soft cry of an infant broke the silence. Catherine wiped her eyes quickly. "That's Ethan," she said, her voice thick with emotion. She hesitated, then added, "Would you like to meet your grandson?" When Catherine led me to the nursery, my heart raced. The room was painted a soft shade of blue, with hand-painted clouds drifting across the ceiling. A mobile of tiny stars hung over the crib where my grandson lay, his tiny fists waving in the air. Catherine hesitated before picking him up, as if unsure whether to allow me this closeness. Finally, she lifted him, cradling him with practiced ease. "This is Ethan," she said, her voice softer than I'd heard it in years. "He's beautiful," I whispered, afraid my voice might break. "He has your eyes." Catherine didn't respond, but she didn't pull away when I reached out to touch his tiny hand. His fingers curled around mine, and something inside me both broke and healed at once. "Would you like to hold him?" she asked after a moment. I nodded, unable to speak. When she placed Ethan in my arms, the weight of him, so small yet so significant, brought tears to my eyes. I'd dreamed of this moment since Catherine told me she was pregnant, in a terse text message that read only, "Just so you know, I'm expecting. Due in July." "I can make some coffee," Catherine said after a while, taking Ethan back. "If you want to talk." The kitchen was just as perfect as the rest of the house, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, everything in its place. I sat at the island while Catherine prepared coffee, Ethan now sleeping in a bassinet nearby. "Your letter," she began, not looking at me. "Is it true? All of it?" I nodded slowly. "Every word. Why didn't you tell me before? About selling Grandma's house for my medical school?" The question hung between us, heavy with years of misunderstanding. "Would you have accepted it?" I asked gently. She didn't answer, but we both knew the truth. The Catherine who had married James Whitaker would never have accepted that kind of help from me. Not after what happened at their engagement dinner. It was the first time I'd met James's family, old money, with the kind of polished manners that made my department store outfit feel like a costume. We sat around a table that could have hosted 20, though we were only 6. James's mother, Victoria, had orchestrated the entire evening, from the 5-course meal to the pointed questions aimed my way. "And what do you do, Susan?" she had asked, though I knew James had already told them. "I'm a nurse at Memorial," I'd answered, trying to match her cool tone. "Ah," she'd said with a thin smile. "How rewarding." But the real blow came later, when the conversation turned to family. "Catherine tells us her father isn't in the picture," Victoria had said, swirling her wine. "Left when she was young, was it?" "Mom," James had warned, but Victoria continued. "I've always believed that stable families produce stable individuals," she'd said, eyes fixed on me. "Children need both parents, don't they?" I'd felt Catherine tense beside me, saw the flush creeping up her neck. Before I could respond, Victoria delivered the final cut. "Of course, some mothers manage beautifully on their own. Though I imagine it must have been difficult, working so much. Catherine mentioned you weren't around much during her formative years." The silence that followed was deafening. Catherine hadn't defended me. She'd stared at her plate, cheeks burning with what I now recognized as shame. Shame of me, of our past, of everything that didn't fit into the world she was marrying into. After that night, our already fragile relationship deteriorated further. When they announced their engagement formally, I received a printed invitation in the mail. For the wedding, I was seated at the back, barely visible in the family photos. Our communication dwindled to obligatory birthday calls and generic Christmas cards signed, Catherine and James. Then came the text about her pregnancy. No call, no visit, just 27 clinical characters informing me I would be a grandmother. I sent gifts, a hand-knitted blanket, children's books I'd saved from Catherine's childhood, a silver rattle that had been mine, but received no acknowledgement. When I called to ask about the baby shower, Catherine informed me tersely that it was just a small gathering for close friends. The message was clear: I wasn't close enough to be included. "Why did you stay away?" Catherine asked now, placing a mug of coffee in front of me. "After Ethan was born?" I looked up, surprised. "Stay away?" "Catherine, I called the hospital every day. I sent flowers. I texted you asking when I could visit. You never responded." Her brow furrowed. "What? I never got any flowers. Or texts about visiting." A chill ran through me as understanding dawned. "Did you change your number?" "No," she said slowly. "I've had the same one for years." "Then James must have," I stopped myself, but it was too late. Catherine's eyes narrowed. "James must have what?" I hesitated, then decided that after all these years of silence, the truth was the only path forward. "I think James may have intercepted my messages. And the gifts I sent for Ethan." "That's ridiculous," Catherine said automatically, but I could see doubt flicker across her face. "James wouldn't do that." "Wouldn't he?" I asked softly. "Catherine, from the moment you met him, your contact with me has steadily decreased. Is it so hard to believe he might have?" The front door opened before I could finish. Heavy footsteps sounded in the hallway. "Kate? Whose car is in the driveway?" James's voice called out. Catherine's eyes met mine, suddenly alert with something like fear. "It's my mother," she called back, her voice strained. James appeared in the doorway, his expression shifting from surprise to cold displeasure when he saw me. "Susan," he said flatly. What an unexpected surprise. The temperature in the kitchen seemed to drop several degrees as James entered. Tall and imposing in his tailored suit, he looked out of place in the homey kitchen, like a corporate executive who'd wandered into the wrong building. "I didn't realize we were expecting company today," he said, his polite tone contradicted by the tightness around his eyes. Catherine shifted uncomfortably. "Mom brought a gift for Ethan." James's gaze flicked to the silver locket on the counter, his expression unreadable. "How thoughtful," he said flatly. "I was just leaving," I offered, though it broke my heart to cut this rare moment with Catherine and Ethan short. "No," Catherine said suddenly, her voice stronger than before. "We were talking. And I'd like to finish our conversation." James raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by her assertiveness. "Of course," he said smoothly, loosening his tie. "I'll just check some emails in the study." Once he disappeared down the hallway, Catherine exhaled slowly. "He's under a lot of pressure at work," she said, though I hadn't asked for an explanation. "Catherine," I said gently, "what did my letter say that upset you so much?" She picked up the locket, turning it over in her hands. "You sold Grandma's house," she whispered. "The only thing of value you had. To pay for my medical school." I nodded, the memory still painful. "I didn't want you to know. I knew how much you wanted to be independent." "But $200,000? Her voice cracked. "And you never said a word. You let me believe you'd kept the house, that you were just traveling or something." I smiled sadly. "Would you have accepted the money if you'd known?" She didn't answer immediately. We both knew the truth. After her father left, Catherine had developed a fierce independence, refusing help even when she desperately needed it. "Why did you write this now?" she asked finally. "After all these years?" I took a deep breath. "Because I wanted you to know the truth before it was too late. And because I wanted Ethan to have something that connected him to his family history, something real, not the sanitized version James's family prefers." Catherine flinched at that. "They've been good to me, Mom." "Have they? Or have they been good to the version of you they've crafted? The one without the messy past, without the mother who worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table?" Catherine looked away, but not before I caught the flash of recognition in her eyes. "When was the last time you spoke to Aunt Marge?" I asked. Or your cousins? When was the last time you mentioned where you grew up, or that your mother was a nurse who put herself through school after your father left? That's not fair, she whispered, but there was no conviction in her voice. Isn't it? Catherine, since you met James, you've been slowly erasing parts of yourself, parts connected to me, to your past. The woman who Victoria Whittaker welcomes to her country club brunches isn't my daughter. She's a carefully constructed facade. Catherine's eyes filled with tears again. You don't understand how hard it's been. Trying to fit in, to be what they expect. I understand better than you think, I said quietly. But what I don't understand is why my own daughter would let her husband hide my messages, my gifts, why she would allow me to be cut out of her life, and now my grandson's. I didn't know, she insisted, her voice breaking. I swear, Mom. About the texts, the gifts, I didn't know. I reached across the table and took her hand. Then prove it. Show me your phone. She hesitated, then pulled her phone from her pocket, unlocking it and handing it to me. I searched through her messages, nothing from me for months, though I'd sent dozens of texts. No photos of the gifts I'd sent, no mention of my calls. Check your blocked numbers, I suggested quietly. Her fingers trembled as she navigated to the settings. When she saw my number on the blocked list, her face went pale. I didn't do this, she whispered. I would never. The sound of a throat clearing made us both look up. James stood in the doorway, his expression cold. Finding everything you need? He asked Catherine, his voice dangerously calm. Catherine held up her phone, hands shaking. Did you block my mother's number? James's hesitation was answer enough. Why? Catherine demanded, standing up. Why would you do that? James stepped into the kitchen, closing the distance between them. You know why. Every time you talk to her, you get upset. She fills your head with all this guilt about your past. You were finally moving forward, Catherine. Being part of a proper family. A proper family? I echoed, unable to contain myself. What exactly do you mean by that, James? He barely glanced at me. No offense, Susan, but you have to admit your family situation wasn't exactly traditional. Catherine deserves better. Better than what? Catherine asked, her voice rising. Better than a mother who sacrificed everything for me? Who sold her only inheritance to put me through medical school? James's eyes widened slightly. What are you talking about? Catherine thrust my letter at him. Read it. See what kind of mother you've been keeping me from. As James reluctantly took the letter, Ethan began to cry. Catherine moved to the bassinet, lifting him with gentle hands. I think it's time for you to go, James said to me, setting the letter aside without reading it. No, Catherine said firmly, surprising us both. She's staying. She's his grandmother, and she deserves to know him. The look that passed between Catherine and James was electric with tension. For perhaps the first time in their marriage, she was openly defying him. We'll discuss this later, James said tightly, turning on his heel and leaving the room. Catherine exhaled shakily, cradling Ethan close. I'm sorry, Mom, she whispered. I had no idea. 3 days passed before I heard from Catherine again. 3 long days of checking my phone, hoping the silent treatment wasn't returning. When my phone finally rang with her number, my hand trembled as I answered. Mom? Her voice sounded strange, constrained, as if she were trying not to cry. Catherine? Is everything okay? Can I come over? Just me and Ethan? Of course, I said, my heart racing. Anytime. An hour later, Catherine stood at my door, baby carrier in one hand, a large tote bag in the other. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale. Come in, sweetheart, I said, stepping aside. My small apartment was nothing like Catherine's immaculate home. Books crowded every surface, plants clustered near the windows, and photographs, so many photographs of Catherine through the years, covered the walls. I'd decorated on a nurse's retirement income, but it was cozy and unmistakably mine. Catherine set Ethan's carrier down gently, then sank onto my worn sofa. I found them, she said quietly. Found what? Everything. She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a shoebox. The birthday cards you sent that I never received. The Christmas presents. Photos of you at your nursing graduation that James said must have gotten lost in the mail. My heart constricted. Where were they? In a locked drawer in James's office. I don't even know why I looked there. After you left, we had a huge fight. He stormed out, and I just started searching. Like something inside me knew. She opened the box, revealing years of erased connection, cards for every occasion, small gifts wrapped in colorful paper, photographs documenting milestones in my life that Catherine had never been allowed to witness. There's more, she said, voice trembling. She pulled out her phone, opening her email. I checked his email. He's had correspondence with his mother about you since we first started dating. They were planning how to minimize your influence on me. Her fingers shook as she showed me the emails. Victoria Whitaker's elegant prose couldn't disguise the ugly sentiment. Susan represents everything we've worked to distance ourselves from, one read. Working class values, that ghastly apartment, her embarrassing career. Catherine needs to understand she can't bring that baggage into our family. Another, more recent, James, darling, you simply must ensure Susan doesn't become a regular fixture in Ethan's life. Children are so impressionable, and we can't have him picking up her mannerisms or, heaven forbid, her opinions. Anger flared inside me, but it was overshadowed by heartbreak for my daughter, who was seeing the ugly truth of her marriage laid bare. I'm so sorry, I whispered, reaching for her hand. No, Catherine said firmly. I'm the one who's sorry. I let this happen. I was so desperate to belong somewhere that felt stable. Prestigious. The Whitakers represented everything Dad took from us when he left. Her words struck me like a physical blow. All these years, and I'd never fully understood how deeply her father's abandonment had wounded her. After Dad left, she continued, I felt like such a failure. Like maybe if I'd been better, smarter, prettier, he would have stayed. And you worked so much, I know now it was for me, but then, I just felt alone. I should have been there more, I acknowledged. I was so focused on keeping us afloat that I missed how much you were hurting. Then the Whitakers came along, Catherine said. This perfect, intact family that never struggled for money, never had to choose between paying the electric bill or buying school supplies. James was so confident, so secure in his place in the world. And they made you feel secure too, I finished for her. She nodded. But it was all conditional. I had to become who they wanted. I had to erase the parts of myself they found distasteful, including you. She wiped away tears. I didn't recognize what was happening until I saw those blocked messages, those hidden gifts. And then it all came crashing down. I've spent 6 years letting them edit my life, my history, even my relationship with my own mother. What happens now? I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Catherine looked down at Ethan, sleeping peacefully in his carrier. I don't know. When I confronted James about the hidden gifts, he said he was protecting me. That every time I talked to you, I got emotional and irrational. When I wouldn't drop it, he called his mother. My stomach tightened. And? Victoria suggested I might be experiencing postpartum depression. That my hormone-addled mind was making me paranoid. Catherine's laugh was bitter. She's coming over tomorrow to help me through this difficult time. Are you going back there tonight? I asked, concern growing. Catherine hesitated. I told James the first needed space to think. He didn't like it, but I left anyway. I took a deep breath, weighing my words carefully. You can stay here as long as you need. Both of you. For a moment, Catherine looked like the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, seeking safety. Then her expression hardened with resolve. I need to figure some things out. About my marriage, about who I've become. She looked around my apartment, taking in the photographs that documented her childhood. You never gave up on me, did you? Even when I pushed you away? Never, I said simply. You're my daughter. That doesn't change, no matter what. Catherine reached for the locket she now wore around her neck. The letter you wrote, about selling Grandma's house for my education, why didn't you ever tell me before? Because you needed to believe you'd done it on your own, I said. Your independence was so important to you after your father left. I didn't want to take that away. But you let me think. Her voice caught. You let me think you didn't care enough to help. Sometimes love means letting the people you care about believe what they need to believe, I said softly. Even when it hurts you. Catherine stood suddenly, moving to the wall of photographs. She stopped at one I'd taken on her first day of medical school, her smile bright, her future seemingly limitless. I don't even recognize myself anymore, she whispered. I've spent so long trying to be Catherine Whitaker that I've forgotten who Catherine Turner was supposed to be. Catherine stayed with me that night, sleeping in my spare bedroom with Ethan's carrier beside her. The next morning, I woke to find her sitting at my kitchen table, staring at her phone. 15 missed calls, she said without looking up. 10 from James, 5 from Victoria. I poured us both coffee, saying nothing. This had to be Catherine's decision. Victoria's message says she's coming to the house at noon to sort this unfortunate situation out, Catherine continued, voice flat. James sent a text saying he's sorry if he hurt me, but he was only trying to protect our family from unnecessary complications. Unnecessary complications, I repeated softly. Is that what I am? Catherine finally looked up, her eyes clear and resolute. Not anymore. I need to face them, both of them. And I want you with me. Are you sure? I asked, surprised. That might make things worse. It's already worse, Mom. She reached for my hand. I need to stand up to them, and I can't do it alone. Not yet. The drive to Catherine's house was silent, each of us lost in our thoughts. Ethan slept peacefully in his car seat, unaware of the storm brewing around him. When we pulled into the driveway, James's car was already there, along with Victoria's sleek silver Mercedes. Catherine took a deep breath, then turned to me. Whatever happens in there, thank you for coming back into my life. Inside, James and Victoria sat in the living room like royalty granting an audience. Victoria's eyebrows rose dramatically when she saw me behind Catherine. What is she doing here? She asked, not bothering to hide her disdain. She's my mother, Catherine said simply, setting Ethan's carrier down. And she's staying. James stood, his expression a mix of anger and confusion. Catherine, you're not thinking clearly. We agreed. No, you decided, Catherine interrupted. You've been deciding everything for years, James. What I know, who I talk to, even which parts of my past are acceptable. Victoria made a small, dismissive sound. Dear, you're obviously overwhelmed. Motherhood is challenging for everyone, but especially for women who lacked proper maternal examples. My hands clenched into fists, but I remained silent. This was Catherine's battle. Proper maternal examples? Catherine echoed, her voice dangerously soft. You mean like a mother who would sell her only valuable possession to pay for her daughter's education? Who worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over our heads? Who never once complained or asked for anything in return? Victoria's perfectly composed face tightened. Catherine, we've discussed this. Your upbringing was unfortunate. But you've moved beyond that now. You're a Whitaker. Am I? Catherine challenged. Because it seems like being a Whitaker means erasing everything that came before. Including my mother. James stepped forward, his voice conciliatory. Kate, no one's trying to erase your past. We just wanted to help you move forward. Your mother represents a difficult time in your life. Stop, Catherine cut him off. Just stop. I found the hidden gifts, James. I read the emails between you and your mother about minimizing Susan's influence. You've been systematically cutting my mother out of my life since the day we met." Victoria stood, smoothing her immaculate pantsuit. "This is becoming melodramatic. James was simply protecting you from unnecessary stress. By hiding birthday cards?" I finally spoke, unable to contain myself any longer. "By blocking my number on her phone? How exactly does that protect Catherine?" Victoria turned to me, her eyes cold. "You have no place in this discussion. This is a family matter." "She is family," Catherine said firmly. "My family. The only person who ever put me first, even when I pushed her away." James reached for Catherine's arm. "You're not thinking clearly. Your mother abandoned you emotionally when you were a child. She was never there for you. Because she was working to support me." Catherine yanked her arm away. "While your parents were buying you sports cars and paying for private universities, my mother was skipping meals so I could have new school clothes. And look how well that turned out," Victoria said with a sneer. "A lonely, bitter woman living in a shabby apartment, clinging to her only child because she has nothing else." The words hit like a slap. Before I could respond, Catherine stepped between us. "Get out," she said quietly. Victoria blinked. "Excuse me?" "Get out of my house," Catherine repeated, her voice stronger. "Both of you. Now." James's face darkened. "This is my house too, Catherine. You can't just." "I can and I am," she interrupted. "I need time to think, and I can't do that with you here trying to manipulate me." Victoria gave a dramatic sigh. "This is ridiculous. James, control your wife." "Control?" Catherine laughed bitterly. "That's exactly the problem. You've both been controlling me for years. Making me feel like I should be ashamed of where I came from, of who my mother is. Making me believe that I was only valuable as long as I fit your mold. We gave you everything," James said, his voice rising. "A beautiful home, financial security, a place in society. What did she ever give you except hardship and struggle?" The room fell silent as Ethan began to cry. Catherine moved to lift him from his carrier, cradling him against her chest. When she looked up again, her eyes were clear and determined. "She gave me life," Catherine said softly. "She gave me love without conditions. She gave me the strength to survive when my father abandoned us. And most importantly, she taught me what real sacrifice looks like." She looked down at Ethan, then back at James and Victoria. "I want that for my son. I want him to know what real love is, not this performance you've both been directing." Victoria's face had gone pale. "You're making a terrible mistake." "No," Catherine said with quiet certainty. "I've been making a terrible mistake for years. Now I'm finally setting it right." James stared at her, disbelief giving way to cold anger. "If we walk out that door, don't expect us to welcome you back when this little rebellion is over." Catherine didn't flinch. "I don't want to be welcomed back. I want to find my way forward, my way, not yours." For a moment, no one moved. Then Victoria gathered her designer handbag, her movements stiff with fury. "Come, James. We clearly can't reason with her while she's in this state." As they moved toward the door, Victoria paused beside me. "This is your doing," she hissed. "You've poisoned her against us." I met her gaze steadily. "No, Victoria. You did that all by yourself." The door closed behind them with a decisive click. Catherine stood in the center of the room, Ethan still nestled against her shoulder, her expression a mix of shock and relief. "Did I just do that?" she whispered. I moved to her side, placing a gentle hand on her back. "You did. And I've never been prouder." 6 months passed like a changing season, gradually, then all at once. Catherine filed for divorce a week after the confrontation. James fought it bitterly at first, then shifted to using his family's considerable resources to negotiate a settlement that would minimize his financial obligations while maximizing his control. He offered to let me keep the house if I agreed to supervised visitation for you, Catherine told me over tea in my apartment, where she and Ethan had been staying since that fateful day. And what did you say? I asked, though I already knew the answer from the determined set of her jaw. I told him he could keep the house. I'd rather live in a one-bedroom apartment with my son and my mother than in a mansion built on lies. And so she had. We converted my small spare bedroom into a nursery for Ethan, hanging stars from the ceiling just like in his old room. Catherine returned to work part-time at a community clinic rather than the prestigious private practice she'd joined after marrying James. Her days were longer, the pay considerably less, but I'd never seen her happier. Today was Sunday, our day. Every week, we maintained the tradition that had begun during those first uncertain days after Catherine left James. I taught her to cook my special recipes, the ones she'd been too busy to learn during her carefully curated life as a Whittaker. Ethan, now 9 months old, sat in his high chair, banging a wooden spoon against the tray with gleeful abandon. He's got your spirit, I observed, smiling as he let out a delighted squeal. Catherine laughed, a sound I once feared I'd never hear again. Poor kid, she said, but her eyes shone with love as she sprinkled flour onto the counter for our pie crust. The doorbell rang, interrupting our baking. Catherine wiped her hands on a towel, a small frown creasing her brow. Are you expecting anyone? I shook my head, equally puzzled. When I opened the door, I found myself face to face with Victoria Whittaker. She looked older somehow, the careful facade of perfection slightly cracked. Her hair was still perfectly styled, her clothes expensive and immaculate, but her eyes held something I'd never seen before, uncertainty. Susan, she said with a small nod. May I come in? I hesitated, then stepped aside. Catherine's here, I warned her. I know. That's why I came. Catherine froze when she saw her former mother-in-law, instinctively moving to stand beside Ethan's high chair. Victoria? What are you doing here? Victoria stood awkwardly in the middle of my modest living room, looking out of place among the comfortable, mismatched furniture and walls covered in family photos, now updated to include many of Ethan. I wanted to see my grandson, she said finally. And to talk to you. Catherine crossed her arms. James should have told you that all communication needs to go through our lawyers. This isn't about the divorce, Victoria said, her voice uncharacteristically soft. This is personal. I moved toward the hallway. I should give you two some privacy. No, Catherine and Victoria said simultaneously, then looked at each other in surprise. Please stay, Mom, Catherine added. Anything Victoria has to say can be said in front of you. Victoria's eyes widened slightly at Catherine's use of Mom, a term she'd avoided during her years as a Whittaker. Then she nodded, seeming to gather her courage. I owe you both an apology, she said, the words clearly difficult for her. What we did, what I encouraged James to do, was wrong. I see that now. Catherine's expression remained guarded. What changed? Victoria's perfect composure faltered. James is getting remarried. To someone, just like me. Watching him repeat the pattern made me see what I'd done to you. To your family. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. This is for Ethan. A college fund. No strings attached. Catherine didn't take it. We don't need your money. I know, Victoria said, surprising us both. But it's not about need. It's about making amends. In the only way I know how. She set the envelope on the coffee table, then turned to me. I misjudged you, Susan. I saw your circumstances, not your character. I thought wealth and social standing defined a person's worth. I was wrong. The admission seemed to pain her physically, but her eyes held mine steadily. I don't expect forgiveness, she continued. I just wanted you both to know that I understand now what I destroyed. And I'm sorry. A heavy silence filled the room, broken only by Ethan's contented babbling as he continued to play with his spoon. Finally, Catherine spoke. Would you like to hold him? She asked quietly. Your grandson? Victoria's carefully composed face crumpled with emotion. May I? Catherine lifted Ethan from his high chair and brought him to Victoria. This is your grandma Victoria, she said softly to Ethan. She's learning to be better. Just like all of us. As Victoria cradled Ethan in her arms, tears slid down her cheeks, carving tracks through her perfect makeup. He's beautiful, she whispered. He has your eyes, Catherine. Your real eyes, not the ones you learned to show the world. I watched them from across the room, this imperfect tableau of reconciliation. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. After Victoria left, Catherine and I returned to our pie making, working side by side in comfortable silence. What are you thinking? I asked finally, noticing the contemplative look on her face. She looked up, flour dusted across her cheek like a memory of childhood baking sessions. I'm thinking about that locket you gave me. The one with your letter. I nodded, remembering the silver weight of it in my palm, the way my hands had trembled as I wrapped it. You kept it all those years, Catherine continued. Through everything, Dad leaving, working those endless shifts, even when I pushed you away. You kept it safe to give to me. Of course I did. It was always meant for you, I said simply. Catherine rolled out the dough with practice strokes, a skill she'd acquired only in these past months of starting over. I want to be that kind of mother to Ethan. The kind who holds on to the important things, even when it's hard. The kind who knows that love isn't about control or appearances. She looked around the small kitchen, at the modest apartment that had become their sanctuary. This isn't what I imagined my life would be at 38. But it's real in a way nothing was with James. I watched as she expertly crimped the edges of the pie crust, a small smile playing at her lips. This was my daughter, not the polished society wife she'd been molded into, but the strong, resilient woman she'd become. The one who'd found her way back to herself, and to me. Later that evening, as Ethan slept peacefully in his crib, Catherine and I sat on the small balcony overlooking the city lights. The silver locket gleamed at her throat, catching the last rays of the setting sun. You know, she said softly, that present you brought for Ethan, the one I almost turned away, it wasn't just for him, was it? I shook my head, remembering the day that had changed everything. I hoped it might open a door. I never imagined it would bring down the whole wall. Catherine reached over and took my hand, her grip firm and certain. Thank you for never giving up on me. Even when I gave up on myself. The city hummed below us, a testament to all the lives intertwining, separating, and finding their way back to each other. Like ours had. Some bonds can't be broken, I said. Not even by silence.